Do you have what it takes to specialize in arts and culture? Coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Thanks for coming back to the channel. I have another specialized episode for you guys today. As you know, I'm always very excited to film these, and when I find good panelists to come on, then I'm even happier. And this week I definitely have some excellent experts of the field for you guys. This week's topic is arts and culture. A specialization that I don't really know that much about. I don't work with, museums, art institutions, cultural institutions, etc. So I'm very excited to also learn more and show you guys a bit more about the daily life of these professionals. Before we get into it, however, thank you so much for MemoQ for supporting the channel and for sponsoring the specialized series. As always, I appreciate it very much. Thank you. If you guys are interested in MemoQ Translator Pro, this is the product specifically for freelance translators, and it helps translators to increase their productivity, to improve translation quality overall, and to meet tight deadlines. Make sure to click the first link in the description if you want to look into it. It will lead you directly to their landing page. Now let's get on with the video. So we are back with another specialized episode today about arts and culture. I am a bit under the weather, so excuse for my nasal voice, but that's why we have excellent guests today to take over the talking. We have Laura, Luna, and Susan. Would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers, please? Susan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I am an arts and culture translator from French, very occasionally German, into English. I started in 2001 or thereabouts. And I am also, my day job is I run the English unit at the University of Geneva's Translation and Interpreting faculty. So that takes up most of my time these days, but I still do a little bit of translation on the side during the holidays.
Thanks for being here. Luna next.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. My name is Luna Jungblut. I am a native French speaker. I was born in France, and so I translate for the arts and culture industry and also the sustainability industry from English into French, sometimes from Spanish into French, but don't get so many requests in that language combination yet. And yeah, I'm also a conference interpreter and also a subtitler. So translation only takes a small part of my day-to-day. These days, a lot more subtitling and interpreting are taking over. But yeah, so it's nice to do always different things, right?
Okay, nice. And we have Laura with us.
Hi, yes, I'm Laura. I'm based in the UK, just outside London. I translate from French and Italian into English. I've been freelance for about 15 years. I started out mainly with the arts and culture side of my business, and then I also developed a specialization alongside that in sport, which some people seem confused as to how I could specialize in two such strange subjects that they don't necessarily think fit together, but it works for me. They're things I'm passionate about, both for my work and away from my work, so that fits in very well with me and my personality. Last year I became a fellow of the Institute in the UK, and most of my work is translation. That's pretty much what I do.
Exciting.
Amazing.
So French and English seems to be the languages mostly used for our panelists today. I'm always interested how you guys got into the broader language industry. Let's say, Laura, did you do a studies in translation, or what's your academic and professional background?
Yeah, I did an undergraduate degree in both French and Italian, so I came from the languages side. But as I went through that course, I spent more and more time studying art options when they were available to me, and then I spent my third year in Florence. And it's quite difficult to spend a year in Florence and not develop an interest in art history. So that happened. And then after I graduated, I did a master's in art history at the Courtauld Institute in London. Not really at that time knowing where it was going to take me. I did have a thought that I might go into academia, maybe into the art world, but didn't really know. And then that didn't happen. So I did lots of other things and worked as a tour leader around Europe for most of my 20s with groups, which was great, a lot of fun. And it also meant that I could visit lots of arts and cultural sites as well, which was obviously great for me now. Then I worked in study abroad for a while, and then I came to translation sort of in my early to mid 30s. So yeah, about 15 years ago.
Okay, so like over time, all the different pieces came together,
Absolutely,
and now you feel like you are where you're supposed to be.
I would
That's
never
beautiful.
have thought years ago that this would be where I've ended up. But when I suddenly, it was a sort of a light bulb moment, because I'd always thought that translators worked on legal contracts and appliance manuals and things like that, or patents, which it's great if that's what you do, but I knew that that would never be for me. So I suddenly realized I could do arts and culture translation, and that was a market, and there would be work out there for me. And it all fell into place, really. So
Amazing. Okay. Susan, can you tell us a bit about your early days profession?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out, like Laura, I did an undergraduate degree in modern languages in the UK in the 90s. And then I moved to Paris like immediately after that. And I was looking around for something to do, and I did an internship for a publisher in Paris. And that turned into a job as an editorial assistant. It was apparent to me that sort of the 9-to-5 of office life was not the route I wanted to go down. So I started freelancing for them in I must have been sort of mid-20s at this point. And because it was a publisher who specialized in non-fiction illustrated books, the sort of thing you would call coffee table books, I just did a load of books from French to English about a huge variety of subjects, lighthouses. I did model trains. I did gardening books, and it was a really, really good grounding in how to write for an audience, how to research something little about quickly, and all of the basic tools that you need. And it was this is early in the sort of dot-com era in the early 2000s. And it was just when Google was getting started. And so all of the big cultural institutions were looking to get their websites online. So I joined a team working for the Louvre and their first big website, and putting all of their content into English. There were 7 or 8 of us, I think, and they would just send us, dozens and dozens of work, descriptions of works of art that needed to be done every week to be put online for their new website. And that was a really good grounding, and that's really it kind of snowballed from there, and then I just never stopped after that. So I don't know if that would be a route you could replicate these days, but it was super helpful. It was a really good way to start.
But that's always the same with these videos, right? Everyone is sharing their stories, and then in the comments people are like, so how can I do that? There's no magical pathway, of course. Exactly, but that's also the nice thing, right? To just hear from people's perspectives. I mean, that's super exciting to be there from the get-go of the Louvre website.
Right at the start. It was great. It was great. Yeah.
So many different aspects we already heard from within arts and culture. Luna, can you tell us a bit, like, concretely, what are you working on? What are some areas that you're working in this industry?
Yeah, sure. So I have done a variety of, when you work for art institutions, you're going to have so many very varied requests. It can be catalog, it can be signage, it can be wall text, and all of these have different priorities, but most of the work that you will do if you specialize in art and culture will end up in a printed form, which adds its own level of difficulty, because the level of proofreading needs to be a lot more precise, because it will be printed, and then if there's a typo in there, then it will be on the wall text of the museum for years. You don't want that to happen. So I think that this is actually quite an interesting challenge that I think for me, I understood early on that I needed to work with other people. With someone else who was doing the same language combination as me. And so I think that also a way for me to really get into the industry was to create this partnership with someone who would proofread my work, and I would proofread her work, always in the way that we really, really trusted each other, and we could really produce a wonderful piece and a wonderful text for a very, prestigious institution sometimes. So I think this was also a great way for me to get out there, was also to create those relationships with other translators, right? Not seeing them as as competition, but rather as people in the same language combination as me, as allies, and as people that we can we're better together and we can bring each other up. Audio guides, I worked on, for example, proofreading audio guides, and when, for example, the museum will change the artifacts from place to place, basically they will move them around the museum. I had to re-listen to the whole audio guide in French and pinpoint where there were errors. So fix that, for example. So this was also quite an unusual request. Turned out to be for the British Museum of London as well. So it was like an amazing experience.
So you work directly then with the art institutions, right?
Yes. I mean, I think I had a few work through agencies, but usually it's either a colleague that refers me that is working directly with the art institution, or my own marketing efforts working directly. I try to work directly with them just because it's just, through the agency, sometimes you don't get as many details as you can. You can't ask as many questions as you would like to sometimes because the client is, a lot gets lost in that, having this intermediary in the middle.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially for something like an audio guide, you would need. I mean, you also need to go there and be there, no? I mean, when
I was there. Yes, yeah, I was right? I was there in the office for a month to work on that project. It was insane. It was great. It was like a dream come true. And as you were asking earlier about how we got into this industry, I think for me it was something of a dream to work just in that specialization. And it just so happened that I think it was in 2013. So I had just graduated from my BA in translation in London and my MA in conference interpreting in London. And then I had this request for the British Museum through Probst, actually. This is the first time I thought, oh, actually, I can do it. I can do it.
Very nice. Yeah, I can imagine like understanding the background of an artwork or of a culture of an institution is so important in the translation process. Maybe Laura, can you tell us a bit about your process of researching when you work on something in the arts industry?
I was just going to go back quickly to something that Luna said about the audio guides. I have done a lot of audio guides in the past as well, and I haven't, unfortunately, been able to go everywhere where the institutions are. But one of the things that's always key for any of the work that I do with art is to get the images, the photographs of what the text is about. You can't just translate. I mean, we never just translate the words on a page, do we? But you can't just translate a description of a painting without seeing the painting while you're doing it. So, and even more so if it's an audio guide, because the person that's going to be consuming our translated text is literally looking at that thing at the time. So if you use the wrong preposition or something that just doesn't sound as natural in English, then it's impossible to do that without the images. So that's sort of, if you're working directly with the institution, then obviously you have an easier route of getting the images than if you're, as Luna said, if you're doing it through an agency, then that makes it a little bit more complicated, and they don't perhaps necessarily realize how important that is. But
you usually get like a photo, like a picture of the painting and some description to it. Okay.
Sometimes they're tiny, and then you have to sort of try and blow up these thumbnails and work out what it is. But yes, it's kind of it's sort of pretty much. I mean, if I was doing a description of the Mona Lisa, obviously I could find that online relatively easily, but you can never kind of take that for granted. And if the client sends you the images, then that's sort of it's a key stage in the process, I guess.
Sometimes the same artwork has also different.
Exactly.
The same artwork would have the same. The same title would apply to different artworks. So sometimes you would have, for example, a statue in iron and then a statue in wood, but they would have the same name. But then you don't know sometimes which one they're talking about, and then unless you have the picture, you can't really tell what is the material.
Yeah, and then if it's something like a surrealist painting and an elephant appears out of nowhere or something like that, then you might just look at that. If you can't see the picture, then you don't really know what that's about. But you can never.
Sometimes you really have to push to get the images. Yeah. The stuff that's really just coming out and very cutting edge, and they can be quite reluctant sometimes to share images if they're if it's work that's just coming out. But yeah, you do have to push for that. Yeah.
that sort of research is obviously a huge part of the process. I mean, I have a reasonably broad knowledge of art history, but my master's course was very specifically sort of Florence in the 1470s. So that, that didn't necessarily, when I became a translator, qualify me to be translating, I don't know, contemporary French art, for example. But you sort of have to develop an understanding of where to go to find that information. And I can't remember whether it was Susan or Luna who said, but being able to sort of process things in a short space of time and find out everything you can about something quite quickly is a huge part of what I do, and also probably the most interesting part of what I do, and why I love it so much is because every day I'm learning something new about an artist I may not have even heard of before.
And I feel like today we have a very unique opportunity with Susan here, someone who is also working in the academic field. So I want to ask you also a couple of questions. So can you repeat what's your role? Are you teaching at the university, or are you creating the curriculum?
No, I teach French to English translation and a couple of other courses, and I run the English unit. So my role is sort of looking after the students in the English unit who are working from French and Spanish into English. They work in financial, legal, institutional translation, because we're based in Geneva. They mainly end up working for the big institutions, the Red Cross.
Oh, really? Okay.
So on, yeah.
Nice. And
nothing
do you
to do
see,
quite different.
We didn't prepare this question, so I don't know if you have an answer, but is there some overlap that you can bring in from your experience from arts and culture that you can kind of show to the students, maybe particular challenges or?
I think so. I mean, there's, there are shared skill sets, I think, in things like post-editing, revision. And what I tend to do is also talk about sort of different paths into translation. So you can either go and work for the institutions, or if you want to freelance, then, a lot of people start out doing marketing, local tourism, things like that, because, that's where you're working with the people who are around you. And so there's quite a gradation from tourism and marketing into local museums, and then from there on into arts.
We have heard already from Luna and Laura a bit about some exciting projects. Can you also share something that you've worked on over the years that was especially challenging and spectacular? If you can share it, of course. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I work mostly on museum catalogues and wall texts, as Luna was saying. I mean, they do have their specificities about, the space constraints and so on, but that can make it really interesting and challenging work. One that I did when I was starting out was back in the day on the Louvre website. They had a feature called A Closer Look At, where they would just have the big major, the star works of art in the Louvre, and then they would, they would take them down from the wall and photograph them from all angles. And it was a very interactive module where you could, click on a link and it would turn you would turn the Mona Lisa around, and you could look at the frame at the back and so on. And that was really nice. I did a few of those. So I did the Mona Lisa, I did the Victory of Samothrace. And that was nice knowing that, people from all over the world would be accessing these works online through your work, because obviously visitors from China and all over the world will be reading the English version. The big jobs in the Louvre. I mean, every piece of work I get, I enjoy, because the main thing is, learning new things and discovering new artists.
Amazing. One thing I notice sometimes here in Belgium, German is an official language here, so a lot of things you would also see in German, the same in art institutions, in museum. Oftentimes it's very bad. It's just like the third or fourth language that is still added, and it's, even though it's printed, as Luna said, but it's just, I don't know, it can really disrupt sometimes the experience that you have, right? If you like looking at a painting, then you want some more information, and I don't know, maybe it's only me working in this industry, but it can ruin the whole aesthetic. And some things, it's an extremely creative language, right? So maybe Luna, you can take this one. How do you navigate like this? Some things are just not translatable in other languages, right? Something that is very creative, very art specific.
Very true.
How do you navigate this process? How do you keep the audience drawn in when they go from the painting to the text?
I think it's a very good point, especially because I think that art processes and art concepts, it's a very glamorous industry sometimes. So sometimes the people who write the text, they are so so into their world and their own concepts that it's really, really hard to transpose that into another language. I think that the best way is always to be close to what objective they have for the reader, right? So do they want what is their audience? Is it going to be a family show where everyone needs to understand what's going on, or is it going to be an art specialist reading this? Is it going to be patrons? And so you need to adapt your vocabulary for that. And also, I think that it's always very, very good to exchange with the author to make sure and do some back translations for some points when you're not sure. So there are some points that will be fine, and there are some terms where you're not sure. And I think that doing a back translation, just making sure that you're aligned with the expectations of the author, is the best way, really. And then having your audience in mind, because if the text that you have originally is very filled with very complex art concepts, but then your audience is going to be more of a family audience, then it's better to adapt it.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I think it's another aspect, particularly for, I guess, Susan and I translating into English, is as she was saying, that our text isn't necessarily just being consumed by native English speakers, that it's often the alternative language to the source language. Particularly if I'm translating Italian texts, then it would appear in Italian and English. So anyone who doesn't understand the Italian, wherever they're coming from in the world, is probably reading the English, which means it can be even more sometimes delicate to get it to the right degree of sort of register of language in terms of who's reading it. And to go on from what Luna was saying about being really careful about what the aim or the purpose of the client is and who they want to sort of target it at, another way to kind of navigate that is to sort of familiarize yourself with how that sort of text is, or that level of text is in English when it's written by native English speakers for native English speakers, and isn't necessarily having to go through the process of translation. So, part of the fun side of what I enjoy about what I do is that means I get to go to museums and enjoy the text myself as a native English person, but it also means that I'm sort of absorbing how that's presented in British or English museums where I am.
Yeah, you can put yourself in another perspective, in the viewer perspective. Yeah, that's super helpful. Okay, we're already coming to an end. This has gone by very quickly. I always like to end these videos with some word of advice to people watching this now and thinking this sounds like exactly me. I want to do that. Laura, could you start with 1-2 sentences? What would you tell someone watching this? How can they make the best of the time, education, etc.? How can they get into the industry?
Well, I think I've probably made it fairly clear that it's something that you do have to be passionate about. So don't miss an opportunity to go to a museum or to I don't know, watch a TV program about an artist or something like that. That no information that you can get from anywhere is ever wasted. It's worth taking every opportunity to learn everything that you can, and at some point that may stand you in good stead as a translator.
Luna?
Sure. I think I would also add that I think that as a starting out translator, it was very difficult and challenging for me to get large institutions to trust me, because I was a starting out freelancer. And I think that I had to really learn it the hard way, and quite struggled at first, and had to really work on marketing projects first of all, and then try to build a trust it took quite long. So yeah, what I would say is that building your portfolio and your relationships is the most important. So I would actually probably recommend that, yes, you go to your local museums, you explain what you do in the best way you can, and also potentially offer some free reviews of not a lot of words, just offer them maybe 300 words so they can see, and you can really showcase your talent that way. So I think that spending time building those relationships so that they can trust you is definitely the key to having more work in the future.
And Susan, to finish the video.
Okay, so I have a couple of things here. I mean, I absolutely agree with both what Laura and Luna have said. I think that there's a big overlap with the sort of more literary translation we often think of. So I would say, first of all, to people who want to work in literary translation, consider this, because there is a huge overlap in the type of writing that you do, and it can be extremely creative. I would say with that in mind, I would really advise people to get as much, like Laura said, as much sort of cultural background as they can, just read, listen to podcasts all the time. The more general knowledge you have, the more effective you will be and the faster you'll be able to work. And I would also say you also need to think like an entrepreneur a little bit. We talked a lot about the sort of enjoyment we get from it. But I think you have to, you have to be quite business-minded about launching yourself in this market. And my last word is just be nice to people, because a lot of work comes from networking. All my workers in the early days came from networking. So be a nice person to work with, I would
Absolutely.
say. My
Yeah,
reliable, friendly, trustworthy, and knowledgeable.
Yeah.
100%. Yes, kindness can go a long way in networking for sure. Thank you, all of you. This was amazing. I will put all the links that you would like to put in the description. If people want to reach out to you, I'm sure you're more than happy to talk to them.
Absolutely.
Of course.
And to the viewers out there, thank you very much for watching. Let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this episode, if that's something you might be interested in doing, and also let me know which topic you would like to see next. And I see you next Monday with the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.